Hinds, and I'm here for JazzGuitarSociety.com, and we're going to do a few different things today, talking about legato techniques, maybe motifs, maybe a bit of theory, but overall, I'll try to give you my little slant on the way I see guitar and how I hear things. I have a kind of a legato style that I really didn't. I don't think I started off early when I was a guitar player wanting to be a legato guitarist, but I was really into Alan Holdsworth like everybody was when he first came out. I heard him early with a band called Soft Machine, and I remember hearing more than his choice of notes was his technique that appealed to me. It was the beauty of legato, that legato can how expressive that technique can be. So back then, before any YouTube videos or anything, I would just wear out my turntable trying to figure out best I could what he was doing. And if I picked up anything, I maybe picked up how to be expressive using a legato technique, which is kind of a technique I realized that's pretty much most of the notes are generated from the left hand. I mean, somebody analyzed my technique years ago and they said, you know, you only pick when you change strings. And I never thought about it, but I'm sure in my attempt to emulate Alan Holdsworth years ago, that's how I tried to make it sound. That's the best I could do to make it sound like what he was doing. Of course, I will never come close to his genius or all the deep harmonic level, but I never really wanted to. I found the beauty of the whole technique was more in the touch and the dynamics that legato offers, more than necessarily the choice of notes. So pretty much I play the same scale as everybody else plays, but I think when you have a lot of strength in your left hand, you kind of almost don't need to pick the string at all. I mean, I think I could probably play a major scale tune down a whole step. Right? So you can kind of do that if you want to, for simple exercises. It seems kind of obvious, but you could actually practice the scales you already know, but try doing them, try running them without using your right hand at all. This is going to kind of force you to hammer on or make sure the notes are, that you have a lot of strength in your left hand. Now, having said that, I know that a lot of my students pick up some of my legato ideas at the very beginning, and on the onset, it's kind of easy to play really fast. I mean, one of my exercises is where I'll take like a C, E, and D on the G string, and I'll hammer onto the E. I'm sorry. Here's an easier one, where I take the same three notes, E, D, and C, on the G string, and we'll just hit the first note, which is E on the 9th fret, pull off to the C on the 5th fret, hammer onto the D on the 7th fret, and it's this pattern. And that sounds really easy, of course, it is. And it's a lot of my students will get into this kind of thing, which I've heard a lot over the years. They do it really fast, but they can't do it slow. So I was going to say, if you were going to practice, playing your scales without picking with the right hand, or any of these exercises, make sure that you do them slow, because really the love and the dynamics and the beauty and the expressive nature of legato kind of comes out when you're playing in good time, I think, over slow tempos. My favorite Alan Holdsworth, to go back to Alan for a second, my favorite solos that he played, or some of his melodies that he played with Jean-Luc Ponty, were not always the fastest stuff, even though that was beautiful in its own way, but it was how expressive and how much you can tweak out of one note by just having a lot of strength with the left hand. So anyway, here's a couple exercises. Let me go back and I'll show you these exercises that I used to give to my students to help them with legato study. One is the one I just showed you, which would be pattern, I guess our first pattern. And that's pretty much much it. But once again, by itself, it seems very simple. But it's kind of up to you, the player, to kind of get creative with the whole thing. And you can change whatever notes you want to, whatever fingers you prefer. You can try skipping strings, which makes it a little bit harder. You can try stretching out wider intervals instead of just doing. Try all minor thirds. So you can get some. If you use your imagination, you can get some kind of nice ideas. But once again, the idea is to put on a drum groove that's kind of slow, and I tell my students this sometimes too, record yourself when you're practicing, even if it's only for a minute or two. Because it's like hearing your voice on a voice machine, voicemail. You're gonna go, do I sound like that? You hear like little things little habits that you've developed over the years. A lot of times we want to change those and make improvements. And one way the fastest way to make changes is to really hear it thrown back at you immediately. That's why like the studio guitar players are so good, because they hear themselves every day back and they know what works and doesn't work immediately. They don't go through their old habits for 6 months before they figure out they're wrong. So one way you can improve your playing fast is by recording yourself. Just on a little iPhone camera if you want to. Just record it for 2 minutes and then listen back to it. And you'll probably find that, every time I go to this chord I rush, or every time I do this lick I'm sloppy. So you make changes, faster that way. Here's another exercise that's similar to the first one, but it's a little bit more challenging for a legato practice. And we'll take the same 3 notes, the C and D and E on the G string, but this time the pattern is this. It's a little bit harder. If I'm only picking the first time, and I guess I should point this out when I pick, this is just something that kind of mutated. Maybe just trying to get a softer or more variety of tone. I hold my pick with 3 fingers and I stroke. Like if this is the string of the guitar stretched from me to you, from headstock to the tailpiece, I kind of brush it like that from the side. I don't really pick like the traditional style. I never really get that sound. It's always you almost hear like a little of the pick kind of stroking the string more than really picking the string. To me, that gives a softer sound. And if you're generating more of the strength with your left hand, you don't really need to generate so much of the momentum with your right hand. I think is maybe the reason I do that. But having said that, also when I play legato songs, a lot of times I just brush with my fingers. I'll just kind of brush the top because I'm generating so much momentum with my left hand that I don't really need to pick every note. But back to this one exercise again. That one's a little more challenging. Again, try to move it around. I'm saying pretty much an A Dorian right here. Skipping strings. These are all good exercises for building strength through the left hand, for legato style. Okay, now I want to talk about playing over chord changes a little bit. What I'm going to do, I have a little backing track that I've made that's an A minor groove going to a C minor groove. A common thing that a lot of guitar players do is if they see A minor, they go to their one A minor lick and then they say C, and they run up the neck to the C position. What I want to do here is concentrate on staying like in one position, one pattern or 2 patterns, one isolate. The way I do this usually when I practice, I'll like isolate one part of the fretboard and try not to stray from that at all. It kind of forces you to kind of multitask and see the new scale under your fingers before the chord actually gets there. So you're kind of playing whatever motif you're in, but you've got to kind of continue it and see where you're going to connect it to jump on that new rail and that the new scale when the chord actually hits. So we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards, but this is a little vamp of A minor Dorian going to C minor Dorian. So that was the best I could do at this particular moment in time. But you can see the idea is to kind of continue whatever motif you have going on, because that's the whole thing about being expressive in music is having an idea and being able to actually come close to doing it on guitar, you know. And now there's several different things that kind of going on there. One, let me talk really quick about this building motifs, because that's a lot of people ask me, like, where do you come up with that idea, or how do you come up with new ideas? Well, a lot of it is transcribing. I mean, I learned back when I was in college that you can't just like steal from one person or one genre. It helped me to go learn Chick Corea licks and learn Michael Brecker licks, especially a lot of times the saxophone licks really transcribe and really go on guitar really in a beautiful way. So that always helped me come up with new ideas. Now, once you learn, and it's not necessary to learn like 34 measures or 64 measures of a solo. You can actually come up with enough work to keep you practicing for a week by just picking out one measure of somebody's line. Sometimes I'll hear a motif, say, there's a line I learned by a saxophone player one time, I think it was David Sanborn, where the line was, it was kind of a cool line. But I kind of took that, first of all, I take that diatonically and try to go everywhere I can in whatever key I decide. This is assuming you know all your modes too. But you know, I take the same motif and geometric, I see it more as a geometric shape at this point for practice. So that can keep you busy all day, because not only do you do it there, but you try to do it on the next strings down. You know, everywhere you can on the fretboard. And this is all in A minor or G major right now, just for simplicity's sake. But that's one way to practice. And so I get like one little idea and I just go to the races. I just take off. And then if I, you know, that's A minor. So I can do the same lick. How about in A mixolydian? So that's another couple hours of practicing, I would think. And then you can change it to A Ionian. Onward and onward. You can get altered if you want to. So whatever you want to. But it's still the same kind of geometric shape that I'm keeping in my head to get motifs going. There's a couple little techniques that I use that that are pretty cool, that can help you scoot around the fretboard a little better. One of them is a little sliding technique. Pretty much whenever there's a half step on the fretboard, think of it as just a little pivot place for you to get into a new pattern. In other words, if we're in A minor again, it's because it's not quite the saddest of all keys, but it's an easy key for guitar, A Dorian. And for instance, if you know your scale, wherever there's a half step, you can use it to slide and stretch is kind of my technique, where I'll go. And that can really help you scoot around the fretboard. It's kind of fun to do. And once again, you start to see all these little motifs, little patterns, and the more you can break up the fretboard, the better. Because eventually we want to see the fretboard as one pattern. I think on my best nights, I see the fretboard as one pattern, not as 5 patterns in any kind of cage system. I just kind of know where all the intervals are, I know where all the arpeggios are. But this can kind of help, because what you're doing now, instead of staying in one locked little position playing, you're kind of going outside the boundaries and stretching over wherever there's a half step. Stretch is one. You can stretch down there if you feel comfortable. There's a major 7, sounds nice and jazzy. You can go up. Once again, with that strength of the left hand, it sounds really has a really beautiful dynamic to it as opposed to picking every one, you know. So that's one little technique, I call it the little slide and stretch motif. And you can use, once again, use your imagination. If that works over A minor, then just change it to A major. Whatever. You know, you can use your imagination and go crazy. So that's one little technique. Another one that I use a lot, which you can use. Once again, you can use this as a more as a geometric shape as opposed to just learning one lick. Because you got to be creative and run with this stuff. But there's one lick I learned by Michael Brecker years ago, which it was over a diminished chord, and I don't want to get too deep into theory. But basically, what he was doing was taking fourths and going up in minor thirds, like. Altered lick, and it translates really good on guitar because you can I just do a little mini sweep, which is in diminished scale. That'd be like the flat 5 or the sharp 11, sharp 4, flat 5, and flat 9, and then I just hammer on with the other two fingers that are not fretting. Hammer on a minor third above. I think his original lick was this. Altered lick. What I'm doing there is the first. It's the same. Sorry, we start over. Flat 5, flat 9, hammer on to the major third, and 6. Sharp 9. This is from an altered point of view. Sharp 9, hammer on to the major third. Natural 5, hammer on the 7. Sharp 9. It's a beautiful lick. And I took it, the one first of the motif, like we were talking about motif building, and I just took this and just kept going with it. And it's a really beautiful little diminished thing. It's a little, because you have the natural 6 in there, it sounds a little more inside than sometimes if you use the altered scale all the time. I know a lot of teachers, they say, if you see altered chord, play altered scale. But the thing is, that gives you, it's like dark chocolate, it gives you every alteration that after a while it kind of sounds a little bit too much for me. And it's nice to mix it up with a diminished, whole diminished scale over a dominant 7 chord. And that's what it is. But once again, that's just a little motif and a little thing that works really great with legato technique. And if you guys are more rockers and not into so much jazz, you can take the same motif and just put it over a dominant 7 idea. You can go. Right? Same idea. Once again, you gotta use your imagination and take those little motifs and don't just use them over one. You know, make it a goal that when you do learn any little motif or lick, that you're going to turn it into at least 5 different ideas. You know, set that to make that your goal. I'm going to do it over major 7. I'm going to try it over a Dorian. I'm going to try it over altered, and my favorite blues lick. You know, get some more bang for your buck that way. Well, thanks for hanging in there today. I'm going to play you out with a little groove. It's a 5/1. It's like an altered 5 chord resolving. It's like C altered resolving to F minor. And what I'm thinking here is for another lesson, another day. But it's pretty much altered tones, chord tones, the dominant 7 resolving, which is the most important resolution in music, whether it's a Beatles song or whether it's some classical piece or some heavy jazz thing. The 5/1 cadence is used all the time. So make a little groove, 5/1, and start experimenting with the scales. But I'm going to try to use some of the techniques we talked about today, some of the altered, the legato ideas, and connecting chord changes, staying in one position for you right now to play you out. Okay, thanks a lot. See you down the road.